How to Stop Overthinking. 6 Buddhist teachings that will transform your mind and bring you peace. In a world that never stops moving, it's easy to feel like you're drowning in a sea of noise. Thoughts racing, worries piling up, distractions at every corner. Do you ever feel like your mind is a battlefield, caught between the echoes of the past, the uncertainties of the future, and the constant noise of the present? It's as if you're running in place trying to catch up, but never quite able to rest. The weight of overthinking presses down on us, pulling us in all directions, leaving us mentally exhausted and emotionally drained. Now, imagine this. What if the constant chatter in your head could stop? What if you could silence the noise, regain control, and experience peace that isn't just fleeting but constant and enduring? Sounds impossible, right? But here's the truth. It's not only possible, it's been practiced for thousands of years. In this video, we're going to take a journey deep into the wisdom of Buddhism. 6 profound Buddhist teachings will be your guide to breaking free from the grip of overthinking, helping you cultivate a peace that isn't dependent on circumstances, but rather rooted in the present moment. These teachings aren't reserved for monks or spiritual seekers. They are for everyone. Whether you're a busy professional, a parent, or simply someone seeking a way out of the mental chaos. The truth is, we all can find peace, and the Buddha's teachings offer the path. So, stay with me. Watch until the end, because the wisdom you're about to discover could change the way you experience your life. These insights are not just teachings. They're keys to unlocking the peace you've been searching for. And if you find value in what you hear today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Together, let's explore how we can stop overthinking, regain control of our minds, and embrace the power of mindfulness. Lesson 1. Stay in the present moment. Do not stay in the past. Do not dream of the future. Focus your mind on the present moment. Buddha. In a world where distractions are endless, it's easy to feel like you're constantly running but never truly living. The mind is often overwhelmed with thoughts, both past and future, creating a constant storm of anxiety and worry. How often do we find ourselves lost in the what-ifs of life? We replay the past, thinking of things we should have said or done differently, and we fear what may come, imagining the worst possible outcomes. And yet, the truth remains. The only moment that truly matters is the present. Buddhism teaches us that the present moment is where life truly happens. The past is gone and the future is yet to unfold. But so often, we allow these two intangible realms to dominate our thoughts and our actions, leaving us restless and disconnected. The Buddha, in his infinite wisdom, recognized this human tendency to wander and taught us that true peace can only be found when we stop living in the past or the future, and instead anchor ourselves in the now. Imagine a wise monk walking with a young disciple along a riverbank. The monk steps confidently into the water, his movements steady and calm, but the disciple hesitates, unsure whether he can safely cross. He fears the swift current, thinking it might pull him under. The monk looks at him and simply says, "The river always flows, but to cross it safely, you must trust each step." This story speaks volumes about the nature of overthinking. The disciple's hesitation, driven by fear of the past and uncertainty about the future, causes him to freeze, unable to move forward. Yet the monk's words remind him that life flows continuously, and the only way to navigate it is by trusting in the present moment, step by step. Overthinking, much like the disciples' fear, keeps us trapped in one place, unable to move with the current of life. When we focus on the present, there is no room for regret over what has already passed or fear of what might happen in the future. We no longer allow our thoughts to dominate us, and instead, we embrace the experience of simply being here. True peace is found in the now, not in the echo of yesterday or the uncertainty of tomorrow. The moment you choose to let go of what was and stop fearing what might be, you open yourself to the beauty of what is. When you trust the present, the weight of overthinking lifts and the mind becomes clear. However, this doesn't mean that staying present is always easy. Our minds are incredibly powerful, and more often than not, they pull us away from the present moment. We become lost in thought, caught in a web of worries and what-ifs. This is where mindfulness becomes a practice. It's about consciously bringing yourself back to the present with intention and awareness. Every time your mind drifts, you gently guide it back to the here and now. It's like learning to walk a path that continually gets obscured by distractions, but each time we refocus, we find the road clearer and more familiar. In the Buddhist tradition, mindfulness is often taught as the practice of breathing, a simple act, yet one with immense power. Focusing on your breath when the mind races allows you to return to the present moment. With each inhale and exhale, you are reminded of the simplicity and beauty of being alive right now. You don't need to control the breath, just observe it, and in that observation, you find peace. The mind, like the river, will flow with thoughts, but it's your choice to let them pass without clinging to them. This is where the true wisdom of Buddhism lies. It's not about eliminating thoughts or controlling them. It's about changing our relationship with them. We are not our thoughts. Just as the river doesn't become the ripples it creates, we are not the thoughts that arise in our minds. Thoughts come and go, just like clouds drifting across the sky, and they are not the defining force of our existence unless we allow them to be. The Buddha said, "With our thoughts, we make the world." This means that how we choose to respond to our thoughts shapes our reality. If we allow ourselves to be consumed by them, we suffer. But when we recognize that thoughts are impermanent, we allow them to float by like leaves on a river without becoming attached to them. The practice of staying in the present moment also allows us to reconnect with our true selves. In the rush of life, we often forget who we really are beneath the layers of expectations, worries, and the noise of the world. But when we slow down and pay attention to the present, we reconnect with our core, with the essence of who we are beyond the roles we play or the judgments we carry. This is the ultimate freedom, to live not as a reaction to the past or a projection of the future, but to simply be. To illustrate this point, imagine standing in a quiet garden. The leaves are swaying gently in the wind. The scent of flowers fills the air, and you feel the warmth of the sun on your skin. In that moment, there is nothing you need to do, nowhere you need to be, just the simple joy of being present with the world around you. This is the gift of mindfulness. It allows us to experience life in its most beautiful and peaceful form, without the weight of past regrets or future anxieties. As you move through life, remember that the present moment is all we truly have. The past is already gone, and the future hasn't arrived yet. By trusting each step, letting go of what we cannot change, and focusing on the here and now, we free ourselves from the grip of overthinking and experience the peace that has always been within us. Life flows when we live in the present. Just as the river flows effortlessly, We too can find peace in the flow of life when we trust the moment and let go of the need to control. The next time you feel overwhelmed by thoughts of what has passed or what might come, take a moment to breathe. Let go of the weight of overthinking and simply be present. In that presence, you will find the peace and clarity you've been searching for all along. Lesson 2. Let go of what you can't control. Our suffering does not come from what happens to us, but from how we hold on to those things. Buddha. Life often feels like an endless series of struggles, each one marked by a desire to control and manage every aspect of our existence. We want things to go our way. We want to shape the world around us into a version that fits our hopes and dreams. But as the Buddha wisely taught, suffering does not come from external events. It arises from our attachment to those events. We suffer because we resist the natural flow of life, believing that by clinging to certain things, we can somehow make them bend to our will. The truth is, we cannot control everything, and the more we try, the more we invite frustration, anxiety, and pain into our lives. In our modern world, it's easy to get caught up in the illusion of control. We worry about what others think of us, obsess over situations that have already passed, and stress about the future, all in an attempt to shape the outcomes of our lives. We invest so much of our energy into things that we cannot change, and in doing so, we lose sight of what we truly have control over: our own reactions, our own thoughts, and our own mindset. The Buddha's second teaching is simple but profound. Let go of what you can't control. When we learn to let go of the things beyond our power, we free ourselves from unnecessary suffering and open ourselves up to peace. Think about the countless times in your life when you've held onto things, people, or situations that weren't meant to be yours to control. How many times have you tried to change the past, replaying old mistakes in your mind, wishing you could rewrite history? Or how often have you found yourself anxious about the future, worrying about what might happen or what could go wrong? These are the moments when we forget that the past is already gone and the future is yet to come. We get so caught up in controlling what is beyond us that we forget to embrace what we can change: our present mindset. The Buddha's wisdom reminds us that suffering does not come from what happens to us, but from how we hold on to what happens. It is not the external events that cause our pain, but our reaction to them, our attachment to the outcome, and our refusal to let go. The act of letting go is not about surrendering in defeat. It is an act of freeing ourselves from the burden of unnecessary mental struggle. It is about accepting life as it is, rather than how we wish it to be. This concept is beautifully illustrated in a story from Buddhist teachings. There was once a man who spent his days pushing a massive rock up a steep hill. The rock was large, immovable, and no matter how much effort he put into it, the rock refused to budge. The man kept pushing, his muscles sore and his frustration mounting. He was determined to get it to the top, believing that if he tried hard enough, he could make the impossible happen. But after hours of struggle, the rock remained where it was, and the man was left feeling defeated and exhausted. It was only when a passing monk observed his struggle that he asked, "Why are you pushing something that was never meant to move?" The man paused, surprised by the monk's question. "I must move it," he replied. "It is in my way. If I keep pushing, it will eventually move." The monk, smiling gently, told him, "Let go of it and you will find your way." In that moment, the man realized the truth in the monk's words. His suffering had not come from the rock itself, but from his attachment to the idea that he could make it move. He had fought against reality, expending all his energy on something that could never change. True strength lies not in trying to control what is beyond us, but in recognizing when to release. When we stop trying to force things, we allow life to flow naturally. And in that flow, we find peace. This story speaks to a fundamental truth. We are often so focused on trying to change things beyond our control that we forget to focus on what is within our power, our ability to choose how we respond to life. There is a certain peace that comes from accepting the things we cannot change and focusing our energy on what we can. It is only through letting go that we create the space for peace to enter our hearts. The Buddha's teachings on non-attachment show us that we do not need to hold on to everything. We don't need to cling to our worries, our desires, or our past experiences. When we release them, we free ourselves. We allow ourselves to be present in the moment, to embrace life as it comes, and to move forward with a sense of calm and clarity. By letting go of what we cannot control, we open ourselves up to the flow of life and find peace in the acceptance of what is. A powerful lesson from Buddhism is the concept of impermanence, the understanding that everything is temporary. Our feelings, our circumstances, and even the people in our lives are constantly changing. When we hold on to something, we are resisting the natural cycle of life. But when we release our attachment, we allow things to unfold as they are meant to. There is another story from Buddhist teachings about a traveler who, after a long journey, reached a river. The river was wide and swift, and the traveler hesitated before crossing. Fearing the strong current, he clung to the rocks and hesitated to move forward. But an old woman, seeing his struggle, approached him. "Why do you hold on so tightly?" she asked. "If you let go and trust the flow, you will reach the other side." The traveler, frightened by the idea of releasing his grip on the rocks, hesitated. But after a moment of reflection, he decided to trust the river. When he let go, he was carried across the river with ease. The water, rather than dragging him away, carried him to safety. This simple story teaches us that life can carry us if we allow it to, but we must let go of our attachment to trying to control the flow. In life, we often hold on to people, situations, or desires that no longer serve us. We cling to what we think we need, whether it's a relationship that has ended, a job that no longer fulfills us, or a memory that keeps us stuck in the past. But when we let go of these attachments, we open ourselves to new possibilities, new experiences, and new sources of joy. True peace comes when we stop trying to control everything. We are not meant to hold on to life, we are meant to flow with it. When we accept the things we cannot change, we free ourselves from unnecessary suffering and open the door to inner peace. So, the next time you find yourself struggling against what cannot be changed, take a deep breath, let go, and trust that life will guide you to where you need to be. In letting go, you find freedom. In accepting what is, you find peace. And in that peace, you discover the beauty of life as it is, unburdened by the weight of what you cannot control. Lesson 3. Simplicity brings true peace and joy. Happiness is not something ready-made. It comes from your own actions. Buddha. In the world we live in today, we are constantly overwhelmed by distractions. The constant buzz of our phones, the flood of emails, the ever-present pressure to be productive, and the endless comparisons on social media create an environment of noise and stress. It's easy to feel like we're running a race, chasing after things that seem important, yet often leave us feeling empty and exhausted. But what if the key to true happiness and peace lies not in striving for more, but in embracing less? Buddhism teaches us a profound truth. Simplicity leads to peace and joy. The Buddha's teachings invite us to stop chasing after external success, wealth, and perfection, and instead focus on the simple things in life. Happiness is not something we can buy or achieve through accumulating more things. It is found in appreciating what we already have, in being present with what is. This is where true peace is found, not in more possessions, more accomplishments, or more validation from others, but in the simple, quiet moments of life that we often overlook. The simplicity of life, when embraced, brings with it a deep, unshakable peace. One Zen master once said, "The simpler the life, the more meaningful it becomes." This simple phrase carries a powerful message. In a world where we are taught to constantly strive, to constantly improve, to always aim for the next milestone, it's easy to forget that true happiness is not something we have to chase. We are already surrounded by it. It is in the quiet mornings, in the calm of nature, in the genuine smiles of people we care about, in the simple act of breathing. The more we can clear the clutter from our lives, both externally and internally, the more space we create for peace and joy to enter. As we go through our daily lives, we are bombarded by expectations, whether it's from society, work, or even our own internal voices telling us we need to be more, do more, and have more. But the Buddha's teachings remind us that true happiness is not found in the constant pursuit of these things. Instead, it is found in the ability to let go of our attachments, to simplify, and to focus on what truly matters. It's so easy to get caught up in the whirlwind of life. We fill our time with work, obligations, and commitments, and we think that this is what life is supposed to be about. We often find ourselves running around in circles, thinking that more achievements, more possessions, and more recognition will somehow make us happier. But the truth is, chasing more only brings more stress. The more we accumulate, the more we need to maintain, manage, and protect. Simplicity, on the other hand, offers freedom. There's a beautiful story that illustrates this. A monk living simply in a small, modest hut was approached by a wealthy merchant. The merchant, admiring the monk's peaceful demeanor and simple lifestyle, asked him, "Why do you live in such simplicity? You could have a bigger home, more food, more comfort. Why don't you pursue these things?" The monk, with a gentle smile, replied, "I have everything I need right here. True wealth is not in what we possess, but in the peace we find within. The more I have, the more I must care for, but in my simplicity I have nothing to worry about. I have peace." This story perfectly captures the essence of what the Buddha taught. We often think that happiness lies in acquiring more, in filling our lives with things. But the monk's wisdom shows us that true peace is found in letting go, in simplifying our lives so that we can focus on what truly brings us joy. When we stop chasing after more, we realize that we already have enough. Another aspect of simplicity is mental clarity. In the modern world, our minds are constantly cluttered with worries, thoughts, and distractions. We spend so much time thinking about what we should do, what we need to achieve, and what we don't have. But this constant overthinking only leads to mental exhaustion. We forget to live in the present moment, to be truly aware of what is happening around us. Buddhism teaches us the practice of mindfulness, which is about being fully present and aware of each moment without judgment. It's about clearing our minds of unnecessary distractions and focusing on what is real and true in the here and now. When we practice mindfulness, we can begin to simplify our thoughts, letting go of the clutter and noise that fills our minds. This not only brings peace, but also a deep sense of joy. The Buddha once said, "Happiness is not something ready-made. It comes from your own actions." In other words, happiness is not something we can find outside of ourselves. It is something we create through our actions, our choices, and our way of living. When we choose to simplify our lives, whether it's letting go of unnecessary possessions, reducing our commitments, or quieting our minds, we create space for true happiness to grow. A Zen story tells of a monk who was teaching his disciples the art of simplicity. One day, he asked each disciple to bring something to the temple that represented what they thought they needed in life. One by one, they returned with various items: a fine robe, a bowl of rice, a piece of jewelry, and so on. But when the last disciple arrived, he brought nothing. Instead, he simply sat down and said, "What I need, I already have." This story is a profound lesson in contentment. The disciple understood that true simplicity is found not in acquiring things, but in realizing that we already have everything we need. The more we attach ourselves to material possessions or external goals, the more we disconnect from the present moment, from the peace that is already within us. When we realize that we are enough as we are, and that what we need most, peace, joy, contentment, cannot be bought, we can truly begin to live a simpler, more fulfilling life. Simplifying our lives doesn't mean we stop living or that we abandon our responsibilities. It simply means we shift our focus from the external to the internal, from the need for more to the appreciation of what is already here. It's about making room for the things that truly matter: our relationships, our health, our inner peace, and our connection to the world around us. The more we simplify, the more we begin to see the world as it is, not as we wish it would be. We start to see the beauty in small things: the smile of a friend, the warmth of the sun on our face, the sound of the wind in the trees. These simple moments, when we are fully present, hold the key to true joy and peace. In a world that constantly pushes us to do more, be more, and have more, the Buddha's teachings remind us that true happiness is not about doing more, but about embracing less. It's about simplifying our lives, clearing away the distractions, and focusing on what truly matters. When we do this, we find that happiness and peace are not far off. They are already here, waiting for us to notice. So, the next time you feel overwhelmed by the demands of life, take a step back. Ask yourself, what do I truly need? Let go of the unnecessary clutter, both external and internal, and embrace the simplicity of being present in the moment. When you do, you will find that happiness is not something you need to chase. It is something you already have, waiting to be discovered in the simplicity of life. Lesson 4. Trust that everything changes. All conditioned things are impermanent. Strive on with diligence. Buddha. Life, in its very nature, is fluid and ever-changing, yet many of us find ourselves clinging desperately to the familiar, as if we could somehow freeze time and preserve the present moment forever. We all have experiences where we wish things would stay the same, where the happiness we feel, the moments of peace, or the relationships we cherish could last forever. But the truth is, everything is impermanent. The Buddha's teachings on impermanence are a reminder that nothing stays the same forever. not our struggles, our joys, or even our fears. This truth can be daunting at first, but it is also profoundly liberating. When we face difficult times, it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that our pain will last forever. We find ourselves overwhelmed by the weight of the present moment, stuck in a loop of negative thinking, and consumed by emotions that seem to define us. But the Buddha's teachings offer us a different perspective. Impermanence is not a burden. It is a natural part of life. Just as the sun rises and sets and the seasons change with time, so too do our challenges, and so too does our joy. It is in this continuous flow of change that we find hope, knowing that everything, even our suffering, will eventually pass. There is a simple story from Buddhist teachings that beautifully illustrates the concept of impermanence. A young disciple came to his teacher, feeling overwhelmed with sadness and despair. The weight of his sorrow felt unbearable and he could see no way out. The teacher handed him a glass of water and dropped a pinch of salt into it. The boy tasted it and immediately grimaced, saying, "It's too salty." The teacher nodded knowingly, then took the same amount of salt and dropped it into a large pond. The disciple, now curious, drank from the pond and said, "The water tastes fine." The teacher smiled and said, "The salt hasn't changed, but the space you hold it in has." This lesson, simple in its presentation, holds deep significance. The struggles in our lives, our pain, our disappointments, our anxieties, are like the salt. While they may seem overwhelming in the moment, when we widen our perspective, we begin to understand that our suffering is often magnified by how much we hold on to it. When we view our challenges within a larger context, we realize that even the most difficult experiences are temporary, and that change is always on the horizon. The Buddha taught us that suffering arises not from the events themselves, but from our attachment to them. When we cling to our pain, when we resist the natural flow of life and try to control things that are beyond our power, we trap ourselves in a cycle of suffering. But when we embrace the truth of impermanence, we begin to free ourselves. We stop holding on to what cannot be changed, and in that release, we make space for peace and clarity to enter. Trusting in impermanence doesn't mean that we ignore our struggles or try to bypass them. Rather, it means that we learn to accept them as part of the natural rhythm of life. When we accept that everything changes, we begin to see our challenges as temporary. Even the hardest days, the most painful moments, will eventually pass. And while it may not always be easy to embrace change, it is in that embrace that we discover our deepest strength. Think of life as a river. Sometimes the current is slow and calm, and other times it is fast and turbulent. The water doesn't stop flowing because of a rock in its path. It simply moves around it, continuously moving forward. In the same way, we must allow our lives to flow, trusting that no matter how difficult things may seem, they too shall pass. There is another story that further illustrates this teaching. A young disciple approached the Buddha, burdened with grief and sorrow. He had lost someone dear to him and couldn't find a way to stop the pain. The Buddha, understanding the depth of his suffering, asked the disciple to bring him a handful of mustard seeds from a family that had never experienced loss. The disciple, eager for a solution, went to every house in the village, asking each family for the seeds. But no matter where he went, every family had lost someone: parents, children, siblings, friends. They all knew the pain of loss, and each family had their own story of grief. The disciple, returning to the Buddha with no mustard seeds, realized that suffering is universal. It is part of the human experience. But the Buddha's wisdom lies in understanding that suffering, while inevitable, does not have to define us. When we acknowledge the impermanence of life, when we see that both our joy and our suffering are fleeting, we can find peace in the understanding that everything changes. This is where we find freedom, not in avoiding or running from our pain, but in accepting it as part of the ever-changing nature of life. The Buddha's teachings offer us the tools to navigate the ups and downs of existence with grace. Instead of clinging to the past or fearing the future, we are encouraged to live in the present moment, where change is already happening, and to trust that the difficulties we face will eventually transform into something else. Life's impermanence doesn't just refer to the challenges we face. It also applies to the moments of happiness and contentment. Just as our pain is temporary, so is our joy. While this might seem like a sorrowful thought at first, it is, in fact, a liberating one. If we understand that no moment lasts forever, then we can fully embrace the beauty and richness of each moment we have, knowing that it is precious precisely because it is fleeting. When we stop trying to hold on to joy, we can experience it more fully, more deeply, because we are not attached to it. As we go through life, we may encounter obstacles and hardships, but if we trust in the truth of impermanence, we will find the strength to face them with courage and patience. We will no longer feel trapped in our circumstances, because we will know that they, like everything else, will change. And in this knowing, we can find peace. One of the most profound aspects of Buddhism is the practice of non-attachment. It doesn't mean we stop caring about people, experiences, or things. It means we stop clinging to them, stop trying to control them, and stop letting them define us. When we accept that life is constantly changing, we learn to move with it rather than against it. This doesn't mean passively accepting everything that comes our way, but rather, it means understanding that everything has its time, and that our power lies in how we respond to it. The next time you find yourself struggling with a difficult moment, remember that nothing is permanent. Your pain, your confusion, your worry, they are all part of a temporary cycle, just like the waves of the ocean. The Buddha teaches us that change is inevitable, but so is the opportunity for transformation. Trust that everything changes, and in that trust, you will find the resilience to face anything that comes your way. The clouds will pass, the sun will shine again, and you will emerge from your struggles stronger and wiser. Just as the river continues to flow, your journey is unfolding, and with each passing moment, you are moving toward peace. Lesson 5. Your thoughts come and go, they don't define you. With our thoughts, we make the world. Buddha. Our minds are constantly filled with a flood of thoughts. Some are fleeting and trivial, others profound and persistent. Sometimes it feels as though we are defined by our thoughts, as if the very essence of who we are is encapsulated in the ideas that come and go in our minds. The truth is, we often identify with our thoughts and emotions, believing they are an inherent part of us, shaping our identity. But Buddhism offers a liberating perspective. Our thoughts are not who we are. The Buddha taught that thoughts are like clouds in the sky. They come and go, drifting by without leaving a permanent mark on the vast expanse of the mind. Just as the sky remains unaltered by the passing clouds, our true selves remain unchanged, regardless of the transient thoughts that arise. It is easy to get caught up in the belief that our thoughts define us. We experience anxiety, frustration, doubt, or joy, and we may think that those feelings are an essential part of who we are. But if we pause and reflect, we can see that these emotions and thoughts are not permanent. They are simply moments in time, like ripples on the surface of a pond. A beautiful story from Buddhist teachings illustrates this truth. One day, a young student asked his teacher, "Why do you always seem so peaceful? I can never quiet my mind. My thoughts are always racing." The teacher smiled and led the student to a small pond. The teacher took a pebble and dropped it into the water. As the pebble hit the surface, ripples spread out, distorting the water. "Your thoughts are like these ripples," the teacher explained. "When you chase them, you only disturb the water further. But if you sit still and watch, the ripples will fade and the water will return to clarity." The student watched as the ripples slowly subsided and the water returned to its still state. This simple act of observation helped the student understand a profound truth. Peace comes when we stop chasing our thoughts. Our thoughts will always come and go, but when we let them rise and fall naturally, without clinging to them, we allow space for calm and clarity to enter our minds. When we chase after every passing thought or become attached to each fleeting emotion, we only create more turbulence in our minds. But when we let go, when we allow the thoughts to come and go without interference, we create the space for stillness to emerge. This is where the practice of mindfulness becomes so essential. In Buddhism, mindfulness is not just about observing our thoughts from a distance, but about deeply understanding that we are not defined by them. The Buddha's wisdom lies in the understanding that we are not our thoughts, just as we are not our emotions or our past experiences. We are the awareness behind them, the observer of the thoughts that come and go. We are not the river, but the sky that holds it. Our thoughts may stir the surface of the mind like a turbulent river, but our true nature remains clear and still, like the sky that holds it all. When we stop identifying with our thoughts, we find that our mental chaos begins to dissipate. We no longer become entangled in every thought that arises. Instead, we become the peaceful observer of those thoughts, simply noticing them as they pass by. This process of non-attachment is one of the core teachings of Buddhism. It doesn't mean we ignore our thoughts or try to suppress them. It simply means that we don't cling to them. Just as we don't chase after every cloud in the sky, we don't follow every thought that comes to mind. We let them pass, knowing they are temporary. In daily life, we can begin to practice this by observing our thoughts without judgment. When a thought arises, whether it's one of fear, worry, joy, or frustration, we simply acknowledge it and let it pass. We don't need to react to every thought or believe that every thought is true. Just because a thought arises doesn't mean it defines us or dictates our reality. We can simply let it be, observing it with a gentle and open mind. By doing this, we create space for peace to enter our lives. Instead of reacting to our thoughts, we begin to respond with awareness and understanding. The Buddha's teachings on the nature of thoughts are empowering. They offer us the opportunity to disconnect from the endless stream of mental chatter that often defines our daily experience. By practicing mindfulness, we learn to quiet the noise of our minds and return to the stillness that resides within us. We realize that we don't have to be ruled by every thought that enters our mind. We are not prisoners of our emotions, and we are not defined by our past mistakes or future worries. We are simply the awareness that observes. This understanding brings with it a great sense of freedom. Imagine a river flowing through a valley. The water is constantly in motion, rushing and flowing. But the river is not the land it passes through. It simply moves through it. Our thoughts are like that river. They flow, they move, and they eventually recede. But just as the river does not stay in one place, our thoughts do not define us. We are the land, steady, grounded, and ever-present, regardless of the thoughts that pass through us. The more we practice non-attachment to our thoughts, the more we begin to see that they do not control us. We become less affected by our emotional responses and mental patterns. We no longer believe that every thought we have is a reflection of our reality. Instead, we begin to see our thoughts for what they are: temporary, transient experiences that do not need to dictate our lives. In a world that often tells us we must constantly be thinking, planning, and striving, the Buddha's teaching offers us a simple but profound truth. Peace comes when we stop chasing our thoughts. When we let go of the need to control them, we begin to experience life with a sense of freedom and clarity. We stop being at the mercy of every passing thought, and we return to the stillness that exists beneath the surface of the mind. To truly embody this teaching, it is important to remember that we are not our thoughts. We are the awareness that experiences them. When we identify with our thoughts, we create the illusion that they define us. But when we step back and observe them from a place of non-attachment, we return to our true nature, the peaceful, still presence that lies within us all. In every moment, we have the choice to either attach to our thoughts or let them go. And when we choose to let them go, we free ourselves from the chaos of the mind and step into the peace of the present moment. Just as the ripples on the pond fade away when we stop disturbing them, our mental clutter fades away when we simply let go of our attachment to it. This practice of observing without attachment is not a one-time event, but a lifelong journey. Each moment provides us with the opportunity to observe our thoughts, to detach from them, and to find the peace that lies beneath. With each passing day, we grow more in tune with our true nature and more at ease with the world around us. And as we do, we become living examples of the Buddha's teaching. We are not our thoughts. We are the awareness that holds them. Lesson 6. Be mindful. When the mind is calm, the breath is calm. Buddha. In today's world, it feels like we are constantly surrounded by distractions. We are bombarded by the noise of the outside world, phones buzzing, emails piling up, and the endless demands on our time and energy. These distractions often pull our attention away from the present moment, leaving us feeling scattered, overwhelmed, and disconnected. But there is a powerful practice that can help us find peace amidst the chaos: mindfulness. Mindfulness is not just a tool to help us deal with stress or anxiety. It is a way of being. It is the art of being fully present in the moment without judgment or distraction. It is about returning to the present, to the here and now, where life is happening. The Buddha, in his wisdom, taught that when the mind is calm, the breath is calm. In other words, when we bring our attention to the present moment, we are able to calm the storm inside of us. The breath, which is always with us, serves as a powerful anchor, allowing us to return to a state of peace and stillness. One day, a monk handed a young student a cup of hot tea. The monk instructed the student to feel the warmth of the cup, smell the steam rising from the tea, and sip slowly, fully experiencing each moment. After a few moments, the monk asked the student, "Where did your busy mind go?" The student, now fully immersed in the experience of drinking the tea, replied, "I was just here with the tea." This simple yet profound exchange encapsulates what mindfulness is all about: It's about being fully present with whatever we are doing, without getting lost in thoughts about the past or the future, without being distracted by the endless stream of mental chatter. Mindfulness is not reserved for quiet moments in meditation. It can be practiced anytime, anywhere. Whether we're walking, eating, working, or even engaging in conversation, we have the ability to be present. All it takes is the conscious decision to focus on the task at hand, to tune in to our senses, and to let go of any judgments or distractions. Mindfulness is about bringing our full attention to the present moment, and in doing so, we begin to experience life in a deeper, more meaningful way. When our minds feel scattered, when we are overwhelmed by the noise of the world or the turbulence of our thoughts, we can simply return to our breath. By taking a deep breath in, holding it for a moment, and then exhaling slowly, we create a pause. This pause, however small, allows us to reconnect with ourselves, to ground ourselves in the present moment, and to calm the storm inside our minds. It is in these moments of stillness that we find clarity, peace, and a deeper connection to our true selves. Mindfulness has the power to transform not only how we experience our own lives, but also how we interact with others. When we are mindful, we become more aware of the people around us, of their needs, their emotions, and their experiences. We learn to listen without judgment, to speak with intention, and to respond with kindness and compassion. In every interaction, we can choose to be present, to fully engage with the person in front of us, and to create deeper, more meaningful connections. The beauty of mindfulness is that it does not require us to change the world around us, but to change our relationship with it. We don't need to wait for the perfect conditions to practice mindfulness, nor do we need to strive for some idealized state of peace. Mindfulness is about accepting things as they are, and in doing so, we find peace in the present moment. When we stop trying to control everything, when we let go of the need to be perfect, we create the space for true peace to enter our lives. The Buddha once said, "When the mind is calm, the breath is calm." This simple teaching reminds us that mindfulness is not just about calming the mind, it is about calming the body as well. When we focus on our breath, we bring balance and harmony to our physical and mental states. We let go of tension, stress, and anxiety, and allow ourselves to be fully present in the moment. The more we practice mindfulness, the more natural it becomes to find peace, even in the most challenging of situations. It's important to remember that mindfulness is not a destination. It's a practice, a journey that we walk each day. We may not always be able to quiet our minds completely, but by bringing our attention back to the present moment again and again, we begin to experience life in a more grounded, peaceful way. With each breath, each step, we move closer to a deeper sense of peace, a sense of calm that comes from simply being present. It is in this space of mindfulness that we find freedom. Freedom from the constant pull of distractions, freedom from the endless cycles of thought and worry, and freedom to simply be. The more we practice mindfulness, the more we become aware of the richness of life, of the beauty in the small moments, and of the peace that resides within us all. Whether we are sitting quietly in meditation or moving through our daily tasks, mindfulness allows us to experience life more fully, to be more connected to ourselves and others, and to find joy and peace in every moment. In the midst of the noise and chaos of daily life, mindfulness offers us a way to return to stillness. It teaches us that peace is not something we find in the future, in some distant place or time. It is something we create in the present moment. By being mindful, by focusing on our breath, and by fully embracing the present, we can find the peace that we are always searching for. And in this peace, we discover the profound wisdom that life is not about striving or achieving. It's about being. Being fully present, being fully alive, and being fully at peace with who we are. Mindfulness is not a technique, it's a way of life. It's a way of living fully in the moment, free from distractions, free from judgment, and free from the constant pull of the past and future. It's a way of coming home to ourselves, of reconnecting with the present, and of finding peace in the midst of everything that is constantly changing around us. Mindfulness is a practice that, with time, becomes a natural part of who we are. It becomes the lens through which we experience the world, one that is clearer, more compassionate, and more present. With each breath, we return to the peace that has always been within us, and in that peace, we find everything we need. As we come to the end of this journey through the 6 profound Buddhist teachings, I want to leave you with a thought that may just change the way you see the world and yourself. These teachings are not just abstract concepts to be admired. They are practical tools for overcoming the chaos of overthinking and the endless distractions of our modern lives. The wisdom shared today is a powerful reminder that peace is not something to search for. It has always been within you, patiently waiting to be recognized. We have learned how to let go of the mental clutter that so often takes up space in our minds. By embracing the present moment, simplifying our lives, and practicing mindfulness, we begin to realize that the constant stream of thoughts doesn't define us. Through these teachings, we create room for peace to settle in, like a calm lake after the storm. When we stop chasing our thoughts, we find stillness. When we stop trying to control everything, we find freedom. When we trust that everything changes, we discover the beauty of letting go. But remember, this journey isn't something that happens overnight. It's not about an instant transformation or a magic fix. It's about taking small steps each day, practicing these teachings consistently and with patience. Over time, you'll see the effects. You will realize that overthinking no longer holds power over you. Your mind will become clearer, more present, and more peaceful. And as you breathe through each day, you'll find that peace is always within reach, waiting for you to simply stop, breathe, and be. So, as you move forward from here, I encourage you to reflect on the teachings we've explored. Let them be the guiding light in your daily life. Practice mindfulness in your every moment, whether you're walking, working, or simply sitting. Embrace simplicity and trust in the impermanence of life. Let go of the need to control every outcome and trust that change is the natural course of life. With patience and dedication, you will discover that peace was always right where you are, waiting for you to embrace it. Thank you for walking this path with me today. I hope that these teachings have sparked something within you, a new way of seeing the world and your place in it. May your journey forward be filled with peace, mindfulness, and the joy of the present moment. You have everything you need to find peace within yourself. Keep breathing, keep practicing, and most importantly, keep living with awareness. If you found this video helpful, please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe. Share this wisdom with others who might need it, and let's continue to walk this path of peace together. The journey has just begun.